Hey, welcome everybody to 10,000 Miles. I'm here with my great friend, longtime colleague and brother from another mother, Michael Kolbrener. Michael, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. It's really exciting
Awesome.
to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. Hey, this is step one, right? This is the first 10,000 Miles podcast. This podcast is about having fun, sharing experiences, and hearing from people who've got unique perspectives, great stories, and and just a lot of good experience coming on the way up.
I'll try to live up to that.
Yeah, Michael, take a few minutes and just tell us about yourself.
So I live in New York City in Brooklyn, which is new for me. I lived in Colorado the last 20 years in Boulder, and recently moved back to New York. I've worked in financial services technology for almost my entire career. I think maybe what's interesting about my path is that I've worked in all of the areas. I've worked for investment banks, for consulting companies. I've run startups. And so I've seen technology, and specifically financial services technology, from a lot of different angles and a lot of different seats. Over the course of that time, I'm most proud of the things that I've been able to deliver for the companies that I work with. And combined with that has always been about the teams that I've been able to work with. And when I talk about kind of what I do and what I like to do, it always comes down to working with a special group of people who believe in the thing we're doing and want to work really hard to deliver it. And we kind of all talk that way about things, but I think that you and our experience specifically is exactly that. We were ambitious to learn things and then to deliver things for our companies to create revenue and good works. And so when I think about my career, and I'm really at a crossroads right now, and so this is a nice thing to do with you, is I really think about the things that are important to me. And ultimately what's important to me is working with people.
The funny thing about, you say when we worked together, we had this experience. We were just too stupid to realize all the politics that were going on around us.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm still too stupid.
But because we didn't realize it, we paid no attention to it. And we just got to work. And we got a lot of stuff done and created a lot of great solutions.
I just talked to a colleague who had some work, and he's like, what do you think? And I said, I just want to do the work. Is that okay? Would it be okay with everybody if I just did the work? And, it's more complicated than that always.
That's great. Hey, let's trade licks here. From your seat, talk about what it was like when we met. And then I'm going to give you the 180. We're going to get it from two. This could be a 2-camera shoot. Okay?
The reason why I love this story is because I prefer when you tell it. I will tell you my version. But the people who are close to me in my life, almost always, I think, I really want to get Vic to tell the story because he tells it better than I do. But I was working for a small mortgage company. It was a family-owned business run by my in-laws. And it was small. I was thinking, getting ready for the call, maybe it was 30, 40 people. I really don't remember. And Chris Pepe was working as an underwriter. Your wife.
Bride.
Yeah. And she sat right by me and we started talking, and she was telling me about how great you are and, your history in the music business and that you were thinking about getting into tech. And, I said, have him come in. I'd love to meet him. And I'm pretty sure when you came in, your hair was long and you were wearing earrings the first day I met you.
I would say the answer was no to that. Well, my hair was longer, but if I had been through a number of haircuts, and I think I might have been barely smart enough to take out the earrings for our first meeting. Yeah. But before the meeting was our epic phone call. Do you remember that phone call?
No.
Oh, man, this is the phone call that heard around the world.
I think I just want to take a second to say that I've evolved a lot over the years.
No, this was a great
These stories will reflect that, hopefully.
No, this was a great phone call, and I tell people all the time. It's about, they ask me how I got started, and I said, hey, by chance, a lucky phone call. I said, I was offered an opportunity to talk to somebody who was working in technology space in a mortgage company who just simply offered, hey, I heard your husband is going to get into technology. There's a lot of different lanes he can drive down. There's infrastructure, there's app development. At the time, web development was starting to kick off. There's project management. There was a whole myriad of things. And you offered, said, if you want him, if he wants to talk to me, I could see, if I can help him pick a lane. And I was like, oh, wow, that sounds like a real awesome idea. And we got on the phone and you told me exactly that, because that's how my wife communicated to me. And you told me that, and then you asked me about my experience, and I went through the studio stuff and wiring studios and all of that. And you said to me, quote, whether you meant it or you believed it or not remains to be seen, but you said, hey, you sound like a pretty smart guy. And I have no doubt that you'll do great things. You just need somebody to give you a job, to put something on your resume. You got to get started. And I said, do you need somebody like that? And you said, why don't you come in tomorrow? Can you come in tomorrow? And I hand it back to you. That was the phone call that led to that meeting, that chance meeting.
And, I think we have complimented each other to say that we've learned a lot from each other. Yeah. One of the things that I remember almost most fondly is, in some ways we were opposites then. I have always been you have to get to know me a little bit, and you are friendly from the start. And I remembered that, I remember that you came in and you were super friendly, and I was working in this environment where nobody was friendly. You know what I mean? And so it was really, I look back on it now as it being a lesson. I didn't learn it then. It took me a long time to learn it.
I think their friendliness was frowned upon.
Absolutely. Friendliness is a weakness to those people.
It might have been frowned upon. It was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I remember that you came in, and the thing that I say, when I talk about you with other people is that you've always known how things are connected. You knew how sound traveled, which meant that you knew how data traveled. And that was essentially what the business was in the 90s. The 90s was about connectivity. It was 100% about connecting local area networks, wide area networks. We put in the first ISDN lines. These were the times where connectivity was not a thing. And I remember, a ton of times where you demonstrated that. And I've told you that my favorite time was we were connecting a phone system from a crappy kind of warehouse space where the office was. It's like a storage office space, to a double wide trailer. I mean, we were in New Jersey. Yeah, it was highest quality for us. And you were very comfortable going to a punch down telco board and finding tone. But we didn't have the tools, we didn't have a butt set. We didn't have clips. We didn't have things to poke in. And so you took a Princess phone, which, by the way, most people listening might not even know what that is, right? But took a Princess phone. Yeah, and it had 2 wires, and you spliced the wires, and you taped them with Scotch tape to the punch down block and found the tone.
We found it.
And I was like, wow.
I tell people, by the way, and I take a little ice, and I strip that wire with my teeth.
But that's what it was like.
Yeah, that was great.
Everything, the ease of purchasing the fundamental tools was not there yet. It took another 5 or 6 years for you to be able to go online and buy a butt set. We had to find the specialty stores still to do that stuff. And I think we were always like, I think if we get that thing, we can do this thing too. And it turned out to be mostly true.
What the great part is, and I just remember this, you loved that so much because you constantly, every time you need to do a move, add, or a change, somebody was coming in to do it. They were charging hundreds of dollars every time. And you said, you just did that with a phone in your teeth. And so you said, I'm buying all the tools. I'm
Yeah.
buying all the tools. And you bought a telco bag and it had a bud set and 66 block and 110 block punch down tools and a toner and all this stuff. And dude, that bag, I was like, wow, we got all the good tools. You know, we've got the great stuff. It
We
was a
got
lot of fun.
everybody the tools also. As that company grew, we were like, this is the thing I
Everybody
always
had a
say.
bag.
I like when people are like, I'm not sure we should get that guy a new laptop. And I'm like, if we get that person a new laptop, they're going to work all the time.
Yeah, totally.
Like, and so, when I said to the boss, hey, I'm going to buy these things, and he was like, I don't know if we should spend that $90. And I'm like, we get it for them. They're just going to use it all the time. And that's kind of
funny.
true. If you're ambitious about technology and you want to learn things, then if you get the tools and a little bit of leeway, there's a lot you can do.
We learned a lot together there, but I remember
sure.
one of the times where we did this, but it wasn't this at the time.
Yeah.
Right. So we, Michael and I, decided that we were going to be brazen enough to pitch the CEO of the company to sponsor us to do a radio show. And my brother's very good friend, who he cut his teeth with in the radio business, owned a few AM stations that he daisy chained and to reach from New Jersey up until the Catskills. And he was selling time on Sunday mornings, 30-minute slots. And I said, hey, we should do a show. We'll call it Tech Talk Radio. You go, yeah, I'm in. Where are we going to do it? We're going to do it at my desk. At the time I had an audio card in the box.
Yeah.
I had a 2-track editor. We had some mics and some headphones. It wasn't as easy as you being in Brooklyn and me being in Texas. We actually had to be in the same room.
Yeah.
And, much like tonight, a couple of notes, a couple of things. And we talked about consumer grade electronics and all the cool stuff. And we did 10, 11, 12 shows, something like that.
Yeah.
What year was that?
I have the catalog someplace.
Yeah. What
98?
Wow. 98. Amazing. Yeah. And so
I also remember, I think we were saving the shows to an iOmega zip drive, or we were talking about them. I mean, I'm just thinking about storage, and how storage has changed. But like, we had those weird zip drives with weird kind of cassettes.
Yeah, I don't recall that, but I know we sent CDs.
Yes, for sure.
To the radio station. And I remember we got good at the episodes because the episodes were 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And the first time we did it, we probably spent 2 hours getting 30 minutes of content. Then the second time, it took us an hour to get 30 minutes of content. And then the third time, we got real-time content, and we were doing multiple shows in one setting. It was pretty cool.
The best part of the show also was the bumpers that you did. The intros and outros were they're so fantastic.
Oh, they were great. That was all the old, music business production skills coming to life. Oh, Tech Talk Radio was a lot of fun. And then, we had a lot of great opportunities. You moved on and did some other cool stuff. But then we reunited and had this great opportunity to move to Colorado.
Yeah.
Again, what was it like for you moving to Colorado? I mean, you were going to move there anyway, right? Is that the way I recall
ex-wife, my wife at the time, we had in 2002 almost moved to Colorado. Put a down payment on a house that wasn't accepted. And so that's ultimately why we didn't move, and some other reasons. And then when you were positioning SIB Mortgage to get absorbed by Lehman, that opportunity was in Colorado. And so for me, that was easy because we'd already thought about doing it. And the plan had gone on the back burner for different reasons. And so when it came up again, that was an easy decision for me to make because I'd already thought that I wanted to live there.
Got it.
And, at the time, and you and I say this all the time, every job I get, I think it's the last job I'm going to get. I'm going to work at this place forever. Yeah. And, we got an opportunity to work at Lehman Brothers. And that was crazy. It was a crazy opportunity. And so for me, I was so excited about it and about going and being part of that universe. And ultimately, it was a real path and journey. But I really liked living there. I felt good about raising my kids there. And I ended up staying in Colorado for 20 years.
What were your top two, maybe top three things you took away from the Lehman Brothers experience that you learned that, that either you still do or that you look around at other professionals and say, wow, I can't believe they don't do that. Like I learned that, back in 04.
One of the things was they had real big, big personalities running tech, who had Wall Street reputations, and were making meaningful contributions to financial services, especially post 9/11. And so, you think about us joining 2003, 4-ish.
Yeah.
We were still in the shadow of 9/11, and so the stories from the people who helped rebuild Wall Street tech, post 9/11 always stays with me about
huge.
those guys. We got a very fast education in gigantic enterprise politics. And so I think part of that was budget and planning. And the skills that I got doing budget and planning at Lehman, those are still the skills. The prioritization, and when I go to other places, those are the things that sometimes I see gaps in. Lehman was very good, and the tech leadership was very well respected, that if you came with organized plans, with meaningfully calculated budgets, you were going to get projects done. Again, such a different time. And so for me, the other thing that was exciting is we worked at a place that they didn't think of as Lehman. They thought of it as some Wild West, which it was. We're in Colorado. And our job was to make it look like Lehman technology.
Lehmanized.
And so that gave me an education in what enterprise technology meant and what it should look like. And then, crazily, we did everything we needed to integrate this standalone company into this larger enterprise. So identity and access management, every application, everything from HR to budget was now part of this enterprise Lehman solution. And then when Lehman went bankrupt, I was strangely in this entity that didn't go bankrupt and needed to separate that technology from Barclays, who consumed the Lehman stuff. And so the funny part of my career there is I did everything to integrate it to Lehman, and then I had to cut it away from all of that. I had to, tear it away from what became Barclays. And, when I think about my career, I think about big projects, the big projects that succeeded or failed.
I just remember, it's so funny. I don't mean to cut you off, but I was like, oh yeah, didn't you move to Colorado beforehand? But no, that wasn't you. That was Rob Francis.
Yeah, so Rob moved before us.
You remember Rob? Rob comes in when we're all in Jersey one day, and he goes, hey, and Rob was consulting for us, but like a full-time consultant, like had a good role and was doing some great stuff and great guy, amazing
connectivity.
Guy. Yeah, and he goes, hey, listen, I'm leaving. I'm going to be here for another 30 days, but you're going to have to find some. Where are you going? Well, we're moving to Colorado. And so I said, oh, pardon me, should be turning phones off during these kinds of things. It's all good. I said, oh, pardon me. Edit this out. I'll clean it up and edit it out. Ready? And go. Yeah, so Rob said, hey, I'm moving to Colorado. And I said, well, you don't have to leave. Why don't you work remote? This before people work remote.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, you come from Brooklyn, you're not here all the time. You can, dial into the environment. You can do your stuff. And he goes, you think that's going to work? And I said, you got 90 days. Let's try it for 90 days and see how that works. 90 days goes by. Everything's great. He continues on. A year later, I tell him, hey, good news. Moving to Colorado. Gonna have this great opportunity. It's great. He starts coming to the Colorado office. We're there about 2 months. He comes in my office. He says, moving to Brooklyn. I said, what's wrong with you? What? If I move to Brooklyn, are you going to move like to Alaska? Like what? You know,
Yeah.
what,
It was like
what is it me? Is it
opposite
something I
magnets.
said?
Yeah.
Yeah, what
Every time
happened?
we get
But
closer, he got
oh,
farther
great
away.
guy. That
Yeah.
was the story I remember. For some reason, I knew the back end was him, but I forgot that he moved. We went. He moved away, but it was fun. He was great. He's gone on to have an amazing career. At some point, I'll
For
have him
sure.
on the
For
podcast.
sure.
He's a great guy. Hey, and I'm with you on the budget stuff. Nobody, no matter where I worked at Bear Stearns, I worked at JP Morgan Chase. The budget process we learned, and I'll give the man credit, John Bayman, the stuff we learned through budget process and how to go through a budget, how to make sure you knew your stuff when you were going to ask for money for a project, and you were focused on an ROI, and you had all your ducks in a row, and it just wasn't like, yeah, I need $5 million to do this, and I'm not really sure. That thing got axed from the list immediately if you didn't know exactly what you were doing with it. And I remember one
sitting
time,
with the CFO, and it was a real Wall Street experience because he was wearing suspenders and cufflinks, and he was not friendly. Yeah. I was thinking of the New York guy.
Oh, okay.
There was a New York guy, but I remember Roy too. That guy was great.
He wore the suspenders as well. But I do remember one time that you and I went to present budget together to the new CEO of Aurora, who was a longtime Lehman guy who used to run the foreign exchange out of London. And other people had gone before us, and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
And so his bar and his expectations were incredibly low. And then when we came in and presented our budget and how we knew our numbers, he was elated. He was elated. He said, that's it. Everybody's coming in all over again and redoing their budget. Nobody has budget down like these guys do.
Yeah.
And we didn't invent it. We were taught really well by the best of the best.
And, I tell people a lot, working in enterprise technology is working in budget. Like you need to be able to talk about that. And I've worked with a lot of different kind of financial planners, tech financial planners who are assigned to my groups to help me. And in the early 2000s, a lot of those guys wanted it to be opaque. They didn't want it to be transparent. And I remember there was a regime leaving, and the regime that was leaving, they were part of the group. They didn't want it to be hyper clear. And and the guy said to me, what are you going to do when we leave? And I said, I am going to be completely transparent with everything. He said, that's crazy. And I was like, yeah, I don't think it's crazy. I don't know how I can build trust unless I am fundamentally sound in explaining how I'm spending the company's money. Yeah, and I believe that to this day. You should be able to explain how you're spending the money and why it's important to spend it. And it's so crazy because so many companies still, even when you explain it, they ignore it. They're like, no, I feel this is important. This project is it's special to me. And you're like, yeah, the ROI doesn't feel right on this. I can show you that. And if you really plan well, you can prioritize properly, and it's not a big secret. Like the good projects rise to the top.
Totally. That was a great lesson. And when you said that, I was like, yep, that's definitely number one for me. That was a great thing.
The other thing we learned how to do there was to collaborate globally, which stuck with both of us forever. Where we would get on calls at 3 a.m. and it would be, Hong Kong, Japan, India, US, all troubleshooting something. And, I think we learned how to troubleshoot in these incredibly complex enterprise environments. And that's a skill I think that stayed with both of us throughout our careers, where we weren't really, we knew how to handle difficult challenges without getting turned upside down. And, one of my grievances over the course of my career is, there are a lot of people who succeeded to big roles in tech who didn't have tech backgrounds.
Yeah.
And that never worked great for me because those situations, especially, I knew how I could help solve it. And the person I was talking to had no idea what I was talking about. And so couldn't really be supportive. And so that's, as you can tell, one of my big grievances over the last, 15 years for sure.
You talk about that, because what I was going to say about the troubleshooting is that what I took away from that experience was I was always I'd say a better than average tech troubleshooter for the things I was responsible
For
for
sure.
coming up. But what I learned as I started getting in leadership roles, that my job wasn't the tech troubleshooting anymore. It was 100% communication to the people that knew absolutely nothing about what was going on, and they needed to understand how to address, am I sending people home? Am I messaging customers? And once I
Yeah.
really caught on to that, that's where I focused my energy, and all the real tech savvy and smart people, I let them go in and sort of fix this stuff. Now, that's not to say I didn't get on many calls later on and sort of, break up the band, so to speak, because they were running in circles and nobody was really running the call. Right? There's an art to running the call and
That's
making
right.
sure it's not complete chaos.
That's
But
right. Who's running this call?
yeah, who's running this call? Because somebody's got to run it. Otherwise, it's complete chaos. And getting the right people and the right escalations and bringing the right vendors and getting their right people, and always saying, hey, no, I know you think your part's done, but it's not, because the incident's not closed. Would you mind please staying on the call?
Yeah. I mean, I have an unpopular thing that I say, a little bit controversial, but my favorite thing is the network guys are always last to join the call. I don't know if that's your experience. They're always last. And they're always sure it's not the network. They get on the call, and the first thing they say is, it's definitely not the network.
Yeah, or no, better, my network.
Right. And I'm like, okay,
not my
well,
network.
we're gonna need you to troubleshoot it anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's not the network, but I need you here just in case.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, 50% of the time, it's the network.
A lot of times things happen because of, poor change management.
Yeah, and also the complexity of network. I'm not underestimating it. Like, you could have a single card in a network device that is not showing an error that you've got to really kind of touch to see. And that you got to touch it.
A lot of good stuff from Lehman. Tell me, in, the time you need, tell me about your journey after Lehman. You've done some pretty cool things. You part of a startup, CEO of that company for a while. You've moved on to some other things. You've just started your own company. I mean, walk us through that journey.
Yeah, I think first I wanted to try to stay in Colorado after Lehman. So Lehman went bankrupt in 2008, and through a series of events, we ultimately unwound what we had in Colorado, and I stayed for the unwinding until 2012. And you and I had met a consulting company in the early 2000s called Syncron. Their original name was Fusion Information Technology, I think, or something close to that.
Yeah. Fusion.
And there were a couple of Jersey guys who we met, in 2002-ish. And we had used their resources for a long time. I brought them into Lehman. And when I left Lehman, I wanted to get back to consulting. I had spent some time consulting in the 90s, and I wanted to get back to consulting. And so I asked those co-founders of Syncron, Faisal and Zia, if I could join that company and help build an architecture practice. And they were very generous and supportive. And so I went there, and my experience running global tech, especially in India, Syncron has locations around the world, but their biggest presence is India, has been, one of the reasons that I have been successful in delivering, is that I've always been kind of good at leveraging global resources. And I credit that to a Lehman experience also, because they asked me to outsource something. It was help desk, I think, and I said, I don't know if I can give you the same quality if we outsource that. And the guy I worked for said, are you telling me you don't have the management skills to ensure that we get the same quality no matter where the resources are? And so, like, for me, that's a dare. Like, okay,
it's a big dare.
And so I always tried to do that. And so when I went to Syncron, and you were at Nation Star now, Mr. Cooper, and you were also great. You were great about taking in a vendor. You had big players in there, and you made room for the Syncron team. And I got exposure to other big banks. So I did work at Chase and Bank of America, and really learned the consulting side of financial services, and a very kind of specific one, especially at that time more than ever. That was a personnel play, a headcount and cost reduction play. Over time, it's, I think, evolved into something much more important than that, a skilled population of resources. And some of the best teams I've worked with have been around the world. But so I went there, and I traveled 50 weeks a year, and I traveled around the world. And I got exposed, to Deutsche Bank in London, and in Germany. And so
You're
to
like George
see
Clooney.
enterprise, yeah, I was
Yeah,
up in the air.
you are. You're like George Clooney.
Yeah,
You're more handsome than he,
no,
but nonetheless.
and his personality's better. And so I really loved that job. I loved it. I even liked the travel. I was younger, so I was able to handle it, and so I made lots of trips to India and Europe, and got to build interesting teams. And I learned how that machine worked. Zia used to say to me, "You don't want to see how the sausage gets made."
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I kind of do. And that has always been, my respect and admiration for global teams has stayed with me. And I really like that. And ultimately, I left that job. There was a lot of politics there, surprisingly.
You had
Like
a good team
anywhere.
there, though. You had a good
Yeah.
team. And I remember when I went to Cash America, it was another brand new role, or a same role, CIO role, but a brand new
Yeah.
company, good sized IT department. And I didn't have a lot of time. And I had I could have sat and had one-on-one meetings with hundreds of people. And which I ultimately did, but I needed to make some fast decisions around personnel. And I remember calling you because I knew you and the depth of the team, and I really trusted, listen, A knows A, the old
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
C players don't know A players.
Yeah.
There's some intimidated. Maybe they think somebody's an A, they could be a C plus.
Totally.
But I knew you had an A team. And so I knew that by bringing you in, and I think you may recall, you said, well, how do you want to start? I said, I want you to meet everybody, divide and conquer, and give me an assessment on the entire team. People were nervous about it, but you know what? People who would have otherwise not been promoted or recognized got promoted through that process.
Sure.
A couple of people specifically come to mind. I won't name them, but a couple of people got promoted. You're like, this person's really good. This person's
You're
really
a great
smart.
senior app dev guy there.
Yeah. And so there were a lot of people and those people have gone on to have good careers after that.
Absolutely.
And I like to think maybe that was a pivotal nod that they got that sort of supercharged them a little bit. And that assessment was huge for me because I couldn't have done that alone. No way. Couldn't have done it alone. And then plus
that's
team
the experience I've had almost everywhere, is sort of assessing talent. And when I talk about what I do now, every new role I get, the first thing, I'm thinking about is assessing the talent. And frequently the talent is misassessed, it just, for whatever reason.
both ways.
I think a lot of times people ask resources to do the wrong jobs, and as a result, they don't do them well. And when you ask the resource to do the job they're actually an expert in, and they do that well, and you're like, we asked him to do the thing he does.
Yeah.
And I've been lucky with that. And so then after Syncron, I was asked by some former Lehman guys to help them run a startup that specialized in mortgage origination technology, where I spent 5 years. It was a great experience. I'm very torn about it still. It was hard. Politics and relationships, were tarnished.
There's an old
we didn't
saying.
all end up friends at the end, and it still bums me out.
Yeah, I'm sure that does. But there is an old saying. And the saying is there's a reason why the windshield is so much bigger than the rear view mirror. There's not much to see behind you.
Yeah.
And, you just got to take those experiences and you've got to learn from those things and do the best you can going forward. I said something to somebody in a text yesterday who was sent me a note of appreciation on something. And I said to them, hey, back at you. I've got the same appreciation for you. I said, he said to me, I always seek your counsel and it always works out for me. And I said, hey, I've slipped up plenty.
Totally.
I said, but, I'm just, everybody loves a good comeback. I said, that's why why I'm still here standing. Everybody loves a good comeback story.
And for me, I was lucky because as my role there changed, Bank of America reached out. And if you think about the course of my career, I was hired to run all of consumer lending tech for Bank of America. It sort of was the pinnacle of what I'd been working for my whole career. It was the job.
Yeah, it's a big job.
And I loved my teams there. I loved learning all of the different intricacies of different types of lending. We lived through paycheck protection during COVID and delivered huge value to people. It was one of those times where you're like, I'm really kind of doing something good here. Those places are hard places to work. I've been trying to fit in, I say, for a long time, and I'm sometimes not a perfect fit. And in Bank of America, that was a hard fit for me. Because ultimately, again, like I'm not great at the politics. I don't manage up particularly well. I'm really about kind of delivering the work, and that's a gap, and it's something that I always work on. And I was going through a lot of personal stuff then too. I started going through my divorce while I was at Bank of America. I was working 70 or 80 hours a week. And I knew that I needed to leave, that it just wasn't good for me.
Life was happening.
Yeah. And so I got lucky and Guaranteed Rate reached out. And I mean, what a funny situation. They had two senior leaders there hired the same role at the same time without talking to each other.
And you were one of them in one of the roles.
And
Hilarious.
when the bottom fell out of the mortgage business last year, they didn't need two of us. They didn't need two of us from the beginning, but they felt bad about it. You know what I mean? Because the guy said to me, I really feel bad about this. I didn't know they were hiring a guy just like you. I was like,
yeah, I got an idea. Just pay me for the rest of the year and I'll leave now.
Yeah.
I'll leave now.
But it was also great. One of the things that I really wanted to prove after I worked at the startup, I hired lots of people I knew. And I had a mixed experience with that. But I wanted to prove that I could manage people that I didn't know.
Yeah, that's
that I could go to a company. Yeah, and I got to do that. And I am forever grateful for that because I got to figure out how to be a better listener. I changed my style a lot after that. And it was a good reminder for me getting into those roles of what my skill set really was. And so everybody I
talk to who's learned that lesson, myself included.
Yeah.
We all learn it later than we wish we had. And I sort of, there's a comfort in the familiarity of the talent you've been successful with.
Totally.
And it sort of limits your vision. And there was somebody at Lehman Brothers who left, and I went to that person's going away party. And that person pulled me aside, big Vic Pepe fan, and he said to me, listen, you've got what it takes to go all the way in this firm, except there's one blind spot you have. But he goes, hire the people you know. I said, you say that's like it's a bad thing. He said, it's not a bad thing. It's just not the only thing. He said, remember, you work at Lehman Brothers. You can get anybody you want.
That's right.
We're not going to lose on money. We're not going to lose on reputation, although that story has changed. But at the time, it was spot on. And it took a while to process that. It really did. It took a while for me to process that.
It took me even longer.
It's hard. But, I got sort of slapped in the face by it in a friendly way.
Yeah. No,
And
I mean,
I
people
can't
used to
tell
say
you I
that,
absorbed it then.
I've had a reputation for being a little bit clicky, having favorites. And I'm always like, listen,
Ha!
if you're doing your job every day and you're really doing it well, you're my favorite.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
don't know how else to say it.
I got called into Paul Sven's office when we worked at Aurora. And I walk in and the head of HR is sitting in there. And I'm like, uh-oh, okay, what happened? What did I do? He said, well, we've had some complaints. Oh, what are the complaints? They said that you run a clique. They call it the SIB Mafia. Now today, because my last name ends in a vowel, nobody get away with that. But I'm like,
That's right.
They said, yeah, you have favoritism. You treat certain people differently. And they said, what do you have to say about that? I said, oh, it's true. And Paul was mortified. He was mortified.
That's
I
right.
said, there's no mafia because we don't do anything like that. But there is a club. You know what it's called? It's called the High Performers Club.
That's right.
And here's the good news. Membership is not exclusive.
That's right.
I don't care who you are. If you are kicking ASS and you are doing great, I am going to pay more attention to you. I'm going to help try to get you from good to great. I'm going to nurture you. I said, and you point to a leader in this organization that doesn't do that. And Paul literally looked at Shelley and goes, I'm good. You good? She goes, yeah, I'm good. And that was it.
Yeah.
It was just over.
It also is representative of what was happening at the time in tech. There was a bigger story of not trusting that we were mature leaders, right?
Yeah.
That tech was still seen a little bit, it didn't have the place in the enterprise that it does now.
That's for sure.
I think a lot of that had to do with that, like guys with, we didn't have Wall Street backgrounds. We had tech backgrounds. And, I think that has changed a lot. You look at, I can't remember, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I think Bank of America is spending $5 billion a year on tech. I think Chase is spending double. And it's just like, that's
crazy numbers.
Those are crazy numbers. And so those leaders, it's funny. I've been thinking a lot about how I think that the business side of these enterprise companies have become increasingly more technical and knowledgeable about tech.
Oh, yeah.
In some ways, I've seen the tech leadership do the reverse.
Yeah, no, I
get
agree.
All these people from like, oh, well, he ran marketing. He's going to run tech now. And he ran card. He's going to run mortgage. And you're like, okay, but we're not just.
I still run into, what still exists is the lack of satisfaction the business has often with the delivery of technology, the time, the process. I have a bunch of customers that are big banks, and the business people want to do everything they can to not include the technology. And then I have a couple of customers that come from the business side, and they want to do everything they can do to not include technology. And then they get accused of stepping in different lanes. A lot of these people from the business are as good or better tech people than most I've met. They're really,
who's made a living out of that? Who's made a living out of that? Evan Brody.
Yeah.
Because the businesses would need reporting and analytics. They'd go to tech, and tech would be like, we don't have time for that. And they would go to Evan, and he would deliver it in Access, on SQL backends, whatever it was. They didn't care. I mean, John Damon said something to me that somebody should have said to me earlier. I wouldn't have listened. I didn't listen when he told me. It took me a few years. But when I was running the startup, we were very precious about our tech stack. We loved it. We were in love with it. I could go on and on about how special it was and why it was so important. And John was a mentor at the time, an advisor to the company. And he said, nobody cares about your technology.
Yeah.
I said, John, you're hurting me. You ran tech and ops at Citibank. You ran it at Lehman. You're telling me nobody cares? No, nobody cares. I saw something today in the news about, how the quality and the pride and ownership of programming is changing. I mean, Rob Francis said the thing that I say all the time, which is I would say, Rob, can we just get back to that? Like, can we skip doing that the right way and come back? And he said, we'll never go back.
Yeah, he's
He
right.
was right. And
He's right.
there's no lesson. I mean, you got to build quality, you have to build reliability, but being precious is a problem.
So what's the thing top of mind for you with on technology front right now? Like what's happening that's got your attention?
There are really two things that I talk a lot about. One is, I said the 90s were about connectivity. The 2000s were about CRUD, create, read, update, delete.
Yeah, right.
That's all it was. There were, and then in the mid 2000s, 2010s, a lot of if-then, a lot of rules. We built lots of rules. And that really is the last 20 years of tech. And now we're in a vastly different spot with the use of artificial intelligence. The things that we did with complex if-then statements, it's just not how things are going to be done anymore. And our ability to kind of explain how the tech works is really going to change because you're going to have to really have a big science background to understand AI. I think the other thing that people forget is the big data celebration 2010s, 2015 is what led us to AI. All these major aggregations of data sets have really allowed that to happen.
Sure.
So I think that's one thing. The second thing that I think a lot about is there's a lot of methodology fatigue right now. Agile is not what everybody wanted it to be. I'm a big fan, but my Agile and your Agile might look a little different. There is no magic solution for process. And so I've been really focusing what I do now and with growing my company around helping people understand how to deliver. And it's mostly methodology agnostic, but it's about the things we've been talking about. It's about budget. It's about talent management. It's about planning. And Scrum Masters are getting let go everywhere.
Yeah.
There are job postings that say Scrum Masters don't apply.
Hey, let me ask you a question about Agile real quick. I want to share an experience I had and get your take on it. I think it was 2014-ish. I was working on a very big project. And we hired this company to do development. Amazing company, great people. They built a lot of stuff for me in the past. And they said, yeah, we're going to do this Agile. And they sell us on the whole process. And at the end of the day, I say, go right back to the Lehman story. I say, how long, how much, and what do I get in it? And that's not how Agile works. And I said, well, what do you mean? Well, we run these sprints and they're this long and we do as much as we can. And we sort of chip away off the list. I said, well, I understand that, but I've got to tell the people who are interested how much, how long,
that's right,
and what's in it when I get it.
That's right.
And so was the response I was getting the consistent response everybody would have gotten, or did I just get it was?
No, yes, and it's a terrible response. Bank of America did that especially well and arguably spent a lot on personnel in order to do it right. But Agile doesn't manage up. What you just described is you got to manage up. You got to tell people, what are we working on? How long is it going to take? And what is it going to cost? And this idea that, well, we can't do that. We need to be agile and, we're going to figure it out. And so I have always combined traditional project management and status reporting alongside of the agile kind of methodology. And, I've interviewed lots of Scrum Masters for roles. And when they come in and they say, hey, my job is really about making sure that everybody feels good about what they're doing. They know that they're doing the right thing. And I say, listen, your job is about delivering. Like, it could be about those other things too, but I have turned down a lot of candidates who just got that answer wrong. Like, this is about delivering for an enterprise, creating a return on the investment, and demonstrating that there's value to our customers. And if you can't communicate that, then we're not doing the work.
Yeah.
And Agile
It's
becomes
weird.
very opaque. Like when people ask me, and this is the trap that I get caught in every time. Somebody at a big company where I worked said, we need you to evaluate this project, right? And so I go in, first of all, they just want me to say it's fine.
Okay.
They don't want me to evaluate it.
Did they give you a wink when they asked you to evaluate it, or you didn't
they
get the
think
wink?
they're being sincere. They're like, let's evaluate it. So I say, well, the budget was 15 million. It's been spent. There's another 20 million to spend, and the business doesn't think they're getting anything they want. And the leadership sort of doubled down on me and said, we don't believe you. Prove it.
Okay.
So I proved it 9 times over 6 months. Kept spending the money on the project because there was this idea that they had, and they were using what's called Safe Agile, which is Scaled Agile Framework for the enterprise. And they just believed that the process was working. And I was like, yeah, can we go back to the traditional things? How much money have we spent? Do the people who are the audience for it think they're getting what they want?
Yeah.
Because those are, don't tell me that your sprints look good. Don't tell me about your burn down. At the end of the day, your audience is not getting what they want. And I think Agile confuses people because they think it's it's, and by the way, the funniest part of it, as you know, is the Agile tenets, it's just a list of bullets. We've all just made up these processes around it, built Jira to accommodate it, or, Asana or whatever we're all using. But at the end of the day, there's so much misunderstanding about how hard it is to build software.
Oh, I tell people all the time, oh, you're going to build software? Okay. Hey, whatever you think it is, it's going to cost 3 to 4 times as much.
That's right.
Take 3 to 4 times in the length of the project. It always does. Every time. I actually said that to a board member once. He said, hey, what do you think it's going to cost to finish this project? We've been working on it for 4 years. This was as I walk in. I said, well, they tell me it's going to be another 12 million and another 18 months. I said, but if I told you that, I'd be an idiot. He said, why? I said, because it's going to cost twice as much, take twice as long. Because it always does. I said, not because I'm bad at my job or a bad manager, but I don't have a basis to understand where we are. And he pulled me aside after the board meeting and he said to me, you are the first SOB that's ever been truthful with me.
Yeah.
He said,
that's what I get in trouble for.
Yeah. He said, I don't mind if it costs twice as much and takes twice as long, because now at least I know where I stand.
That's right. No, my experience have been really sort of difficult with that because it's going to cost a lot. I'm the guy who's going to tell you, it's not 15, it's 30, and then people say, well, why did we get the evaluation wrong? Well, I don't know. I can just tell you that this is where we're going,
So I've seen very few software companies that will hit a budget and a time frame. There's always some sort of give and take about time or feature or functionality. Do you think there's in a couple of minutes here, do you think there's a process now that the best of the best are using to sort of stabilize the predictability and delivery? You're much closer to it and much more of a fan.
I think, this might just say too much about me, good or bad, but I think that if you have a transparent process and you hire experts to do the job and you listen to what they say, then you can get close. But if the experts tell you that it's 6 months and 5 million and you say, no, it's not, and then this is my favorite thing. I worked at a place and the product manager said to me, we decided not to do it this way because it was going to take too long. And I said, the way you decided to do it is not technically sound. It will not be reliable. And you don't get to make that call. That's not your call. I'll decide the engineering side of this. And if you don't like my answer, that's a different conversation. But you can't say, well, we decided to do it this bad way because it would be shorter. Like that's not, you have to listen to experts tell you what they do. When I go to places, one of the first things I do, especially when it's sort of like a downtrodden tech team, which we've seen a lot of, when I go in and I say, guys, you're experts. Don't ever forget that.
Yeah.
Go into every meeting, be professional, and it's very important for people to realize that. So the short answer is I really believe, I think managers spend too much time managing up and not managing down. I think
Okay.
managers don't understand the metrics that they're looking at. They're not close enough to the tech. And that if they do choose that path of getting close to it and listening carefully, then they can tell the truth, and they just have to be less afraid of it, because the
Yeah,
truths are
that's
hard.
been that I'm thinking now outside of, that, and that's proven to be true many times. Many
People
times.
don't
All
like
right.
the answer. I can't help people like the answer.
So last segment here.
Yeah.
What's the future bring for Michael? And what's the future bring from to the world? And what are you looking at?
Well, like I said,
perspective?
I'm in the middle of a
Deep
sort of a gigantic personal transition. I moved from Colorado back to New York. Decided to take a little bit of a break during that time, and really kind of determine what my priorities are. Because a lot of my priorities were determined based on the relationship I had with my ex-wife and the ambitions I had for my kids or whatever, all real things. And now I'm trying to do the things that I enjoy doing. And so the conversation we have about process is what I really enjoy talking about. And I think that the opportunity is to try to introduce options for delivery methodologies, and remind people that they have the skill set to deliver hard solutions. And so I've been spending a lot of time thinking about Agile and SAFe, because there's a lot of really kind of interesting things about SAFe. But the fatigue right now is incredible, and the market reaction, with the layoffs around these roles and the reduced commitment to these things, I think it's important to remind people that we can help companies have predictable and reliable outcomes on their projects, and that's kind of all I think about all the time right now.
Is that specific to a software build, or just in general, even like with a?
I think in general, the idea of custom software, I think, is going to change dramatically. It already has, right? The no-code environments have just changed it, turned it upside down. The only people who are going to build custom are going to be gigantic players. Otherwise, people are going to be building inside Salesforce, in their no-code or low-code environment. Or I just talked to SAP guys who still do that stuff. And, that's going to be a lot of it. And so those projects require good process management as well. And I think it can be applied to anything. Like, you and I have interesting backgrounds because we've run facilities, we've run security, we've run infrastructure, we've run reporting and analytics. Management. Right. And so all of these, the process is the same.
Yeah.
Budget, talent, requirements, and stay on
it. I was at a customer conference, small, 50 people. And some customers were come up and asked to give their sort of state of the state of what they were trying to accomplish. These were not technology people. These were business people.
Yeah.
And this one guy who was the leader of this organization basically told his entire team and tech, which reported to him, said, "We are a commercial offering shop. What we do is not that special. And we will not customize the vendor's product one line at all. If there's a configuration tool and it's built for us to configure something, we'll use it. We will not ask for a special modification. We'll participate on steering committees, so maybe we can help drive new features and functionality." And he said, what I've learned over the last 20 years is that everything that got broken was because we thought we were special and different.
That's right. Absolutely.
And we just aren't. And, he said, we're going to differentiate ourselves in other ways. Now, if we needed some very unique technology, like let's just use the bear, the big Amazon, right? When they first came out with their ability to buy and shop online and their sharp shopping cart technology and their logistics and all things, world class, second to none. Like they needed that to compete, sorry. And they built a lot of their own systems, but they're running a lot of stuff, as we know, in the back end that's commercial as well. But this guy's, it was the first time I'd heard anybody really say that out loud. And I know from going from various banking institutions, they all thought it was all unique and different. And my customers, to a certain extent, still think that. And I want to help them be unique and different in a meaningful way, not in a way that actually sort of debilitates their ability to be efficient.
I used to joke when companies were putting in new HR systems or like budget platforms, and they were choosing. I was like, "You're going to hate everything you put in. It just doesn't matter."
Yeah,
like it's going to not have what you want. You'll want to customize it. And so just decide that you're going to choose the partner that you think is the best partner and the best fit, most closely aligned with your processes, and try to align what you do with what they do. And sometimes you can. And, like for Bank of America, there's no reason for them to spend $20 million a year with a vendor. That just, they'll build it.
Yeah.
But not that's a smaller and smaller group of people and companies.
Yeah. You have to have the real internal acumen to do that and different than all the other things that get layered on top of that. So, hey, let's end with your favorite funny occurrence story, something that happened to us through all the years we've known each other. I don't care if it's from 20 years ago or 20 minutes ago.
Well,
gosh, there are a million of them, but feel free to take
my
the
favorite
one.
One is, and I'd like you to tell it.
Okay.
Is when you came into the Ivy Mortgage office in whatever it was, 97.
Okay.
And what you saw me working on with hardware and what that looked like to you. Because I don't do it justice. I try to, but I love when you tell them.
It was outstanding. Well, first of all, I was a complete fish on dry land. I mean, I used to walk around that place with PCs in my hand and be looking over my shoulder. My wife walked there. She'd say, "How's it going?" I'd be shuffle by very quickly going, "I don't know what I'm doing." But they were like, "All right, we get these PCs in from Dell and this is what we do. And we do this." And they were hinged in the back. The case came off the top, hinged in the back. They were very low profile, and the monitor sat on top of that. I forget what it was that you're doing, but you're like, and then it closes, and then just like, it's just supposed to close. Smash, man, brand new
smash.
Brand new computer out of the box. I'm like, oh, these things are far more resilient than I gave them credit to be. This is great. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I worked with a bank. I don't know. It was late 90s. I was in the city, maybe the early 2000s. I mean, we touched servers, right? Like this is people don't understand that. I don't remember what bank it was, but the guy, maybe we were together. The guy was running a server in the basement, and it was 100 degrees in the basement. And we were all like, you might have a problem with that. And he's like, listen, man, in Singapore, it's 120 degrees and it's totally fine. And you just think about those things that we lived through that were just, unimaginable today.
Oh, yeah. You couldn't spin up servers in the cloud on your credit card in 6 minutes or less, or 2 minutes. The availability of infrastructure to deploy solutions is a gift.
It's crazy.
Order it, rack it, stack it,
I mean, I remember when we said we bought a server and we put it in a tiny little room. And the boss said, you got to have people sitting there with it. And we were like, it's not really what you do. And they were like, no, you have. There's no reason you got to put desks in there. And we kind of held our ground. But you just think about how crazy it was.
Oh, I sat in there for a little bit.
I'm sure. I sat in there because we had a bench in there.
That gray desk. I wanted to find that desk. They clearly don't have it anymore. I wanted to get it epoxied.
Well, that they work on Route 28 in Branchburg. Like that's their office now.
Yeah, but
that's where Avi goes to work every day.
We were out by where you lived at the time. What was that town called?
Belmead.
We were in Belmead. Yeah, we were in Belmead. Great stuff. Well, I'm going to tell you my favorite story.
Okay,
This
great.
is great. And I'm going to break my newfound linguistic charge of not being a cursor anymore. I'm going to have to say a curse to tell the story appropriately. So Michael and I have worked together for a very long time, very closely. And we talked about, hiring friends. When I started, Michael was the boss. He left. I became the boss. We've always had a great mutual respect. Nobody was ever really the boss. We worked together. And we were at Aurora, and we were having a very passionate disagreement about something. And we were at the whiteboard, and we had our back to the door. And we're writing on the whiteboard and freaking yelling at each other. And it was getting pretty heated. And all of a sudden, I felt this presence, and somebody was behind us who worked for us. And I turned around, and the guy was laughing. I don't know if you remember this. And I said, "What the fuck are you laughing at?" And he goes, "You guys are arguing." I said, "Yeah, we've been doing this for well over a dozen years. Yeah. We get to do this. You don't get to fucking laugh at it," right? And I was like incensed that this guy was laughing because you were probably his boss. Yeah. I was running the crew there, and we're arguing like, two school kids. But he didn't know
the work gets done.
He didn't know the depth of our relationship, and he didn't know all the relationship value we had in the bank, which allowed us to make withdrawals like that.
That's right.
But hilarious, just turned around on dime. And then he put his tail between his legs and scurried out. And then you and I just died laughing.
That's so great.
It was actually very funny. It was good.
Right.
Hey, man, thank you a million times for coming on tonight and doing podcast number 1. This was more fun than I thought it would be. We've done an hour and 6 minutes. I'll cut it up.
That's great. Yeah.
Send you a piece. Cheers. Let me hit stop.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. You're the guy to do this. Just to remind you, you are wildly respected by the people who work with you. And for you to do this, I think is great. And you're going to have great success with it.
Appreciate it. Thanks, man.